Gary Hayes, thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking the time out.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Really good to have you here. I know you're really busy, so it's not easy to get even 10 minutes with you at the moment.
Right. No, and I'm always somewhere else in the UK, so it's nice to be in Birmingham today and Guildford tomorrow. So,
Lovely.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're also joined by Mike Holmes, Metpro Group's Product and Vendor Development Manager.
Yep.
Bit of a tongue twister.
I know. Yeah, I've got to say it every day as well.
Thanks for joining us, Mick. Let's get straight into it. Gary, obviously I'd say you're a bit of an industry celebrity through your work with Efixx. If you could start by giving us a bit of insight into how you started, where did Efixx come from?
Okay, well, I wouldn't go so far with those strong words you do. You threw me there. But yeah, so we started out, I originally had a YouTube channel, which is still there in the background, which was supporting people in an FE college setting.
Yeah.
So all it was about was people training to be electricians. And then the four of us came together. So Gordon, Steve, myself and Joe came together and thought there's probably a chance here to do something a little bit wider and a little bit more industry focused rather than student focused, but still keep our hand obviously in the FE sector as well. So we created Efixx with the premise at the start. I think we were over-egging ourselves to be something like the Top Gear of the electrical industry,
right.
Sort of add a little bit of a fun element into it. And that moment in time, it was on the precipice of being possibly the most exciting industry to be in as the whole world turned to electricity for absolutely everything. So there was a real opening there for us. And it didn't look from the outside looking in that anyone had tried to do this in this scale before. So there was individuals doing something in industry, but there wasn't effectively a team of people trying to structure content in the form that Efixx ended up being.
Okay. I mean, the Top Gear analogy is I can attest to that. I mean, we went to Efixx Live, didn't we, Mick? And we definitely got that vibe. I don't want to talk about the speeds of the installations because I came not first. But no, it was a really good experience.
But it puts you on quite, to say that, to throw yourself anywhere near a Clarkson's a bit ambitious, I would suggest, because the bloke is an absolute genius and his farm program is equally as good. But it was that, could we take a fresh look at it, a new set of eyes on it? And we've modified the way we approach things from the start, especially on the live stream. So we used to drink different kinds of beverages on them and we stopped doing that sort of thing. So we were a little bit loose at the start and we've made that a little bit more tighter. But yeah, we'd like to think that when anyone leaves the live stream, they leave hopefully having a lovely time with us because it's the most natural that we can be on camera.
Yeah.
Such as a podcast, exactly the same as it. You're nice and relaxed and all the rest of it. When you're actually doing a piece of content about something specific, you've got to be on narrative for both brands, ourselves and theirs. So it's a little bit freer on the live stream.
Yeah,
I think you've got the marriage right though. It's quite relaxed, but you get some really good information across as well. Yeah, it's good.
Very good. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's electrician focus. There's no way you're not dipping in for an hour and a half live stream just because you're interested in a tiny portion of it. That's our hardcore electrical content. Really, the electricians that are in that one. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think's been what do you think have been the key things or the key thing, if there's one specific thing that's led to the growth of Efixx? Because it's blown up quite astronomically.
Yeah, so obviously, we've got to thank Steve Jobs for the smartphone. He wasn't the first one, but obviously he's in there. And obviously the way people consume their content. So if you go back 20 or 30 years, when I was probably 20 years old, I had 4 magazines. So I used to have one on golf, one on one of those ones with celebrity pictures in and stuff like that. So and Volks World as well. So you have those, and that's pretty much how you consume it. Linear TV, so 4/5 channels, and Sky comes along and all the rest of it. But my children will say to me they don't remember a world without the internet. So they don't remember a world now without a device.
Yeah.
And if you want to communicate to people, I'm not saying everybody, but you want to communicate for people, you've got to meet them on their platform.
Yeah.
And most of their platform are driven from the internet, whether that be, now we watch a lot of stuff at home, even YouTube on the TV, which I probably didn't do a couple of years ago. And I watch obviously a lot of stuff on a phone as well, as my kids do as well. They came into the living room the other week for the first time ever. I forced my daughter to watch a boxing match with me. Okay. So a pay-per-view event. And she hadn't been in the living room for a few years, to see it, because she wanted to go. She actually wanted to go to Wembley to watch the fight. Right. And I said to her, I would do, but that's a 7 or 8 hour day is sitting in a chair. You can't sit in the living room for 10 minutes with me. Yeah. So the payoff was if she did it that day, then we'd go to the next fight. Right. So that was the AJ fight. So it was a pretty exciting fight.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they just don't. They just watch all this stuff on their phone. So.
What's interesting as well, I think, is that in the land of social media, you've got two extremes of what I personally see as the most consumed media. So you've got things like this, like a podcast. I mean, this will be about an hour, But when you look at some of the, like, the biggest one is Joe Rogan. That's 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours. And people will sit and listen or watch that. And then the other end of the spectrum, when you're on TikTok and YouTube Shorts, it's 30, 60 seconds and it's just swipe, swipe, swipe. It's such a huge disparity between those two, but they're both really successful.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
strange.
Yeah, totally agree with that. But you're servicing people on their platform with what they want.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of brands miss that. It's more bland than brand, is one of our sayings we have at work when you're working with people, is that they think that they will like what they offer and up because they're X, Y, and Z, instead of saying, well, what does the audience want and how can we develop a message that actually best suits what they want to see it in, whether that be in format, whether it be on a TikTok or whether it be a long formatted video or a podcast, etc. But just don't be so focused on what your own tastes are. Be focused on what you believe the tastes are of your audience. And that's what we've had to develop over the time. So short formatted content, when we first started out, we wasn't in that space. And then YouTube brought in the short shelf and we jumped on it straight away. So if YouTube are going to launch something new, you've got to get there and get there early. We got there early. Then that content over time, when we look back at some of the early ones that we thought were brilliant, you look back now and you think, well, how did we get away with that?
Yeah.
But of course, like anything, you develop a better system as you move forward. Then that content works brilliant on TikTok. And the rule of thumb at Efixx is if it does really well on TikTok, it will actually do really well on LinkedIn.
Right, okay.
Because often people watch LinkedIn videos with no sound on because they're in an office.
Yes,
Okay, so they're obviously got to be very visual. And we sort of stray between the two. Can you tell a story that works equally as well without words? And you see now a lot of people actually drop words on there as effectively give it subtitles, don't they?
Yeah.
But that's not for anything else. And so you can obviously watch it without sound on.
Yeah.
And it's developing those things over time has been one of the most exciting things we've ever done. It's just, chasing down new audiences and seeing how we can work with them. It's, pretty good.
Lovely.
I think the fact that you've also got the opportunities to either watch it live right now, or I can watch it a bit later on, or even watch part of it and then catch up with it a bit later on as well. You've got all these different ways of just watching a program now. So what might be an hour, you haven't got to sit there and watch it there and then. I think it's useful.
Yeah. And especially on your device, you can watch it any way you like, can't you? The amount of people, always like to watch people's habits, especially as we're through so many different social media platforms. I went to the theatre, obviously, you're sitting there at the theatre, it became one of the intervals. Everybody around me reached for their phone and started scrolling, started flicking through.
Dog, isn't it?
Yeah, and you just think to yourself, it's almost like being addicted to some sort of tobacco. That you got to that moment. There's a break, and now I get my phone out and I need to start scrolling. It was unbelievable. And in that setting, most people were doing Facebook. Yeah, and Facebook is possibly the one platform lots of people miss out. It's the largest video-based platform in the world. Everyone thinks it's YouTube. It's actually Facebook. And a lot of electricians like to sit on Facebook in groups and things like that. So if you avoid Facebook, a business avoids Facebook, they're actually avoiding a large portion of the possible audience.
Yeah, that's where we get the most of our engagements on Facebook are from those groups. And we see that fluctuate month to month. If for some reason a particular post doesn't get shared in a particular group, we see that drop quite significantly. So
the one thing people miss out is it's social media. They always get the media bit, but they forget the social bit.
Yes.
So if you do not turn up in the comments and think how many platforms we're on, we find it incredibly difficult to keep up with it. But it's the social aspect. Someone has spent some time to leave you a message. More often than not, they would like a response.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think a lot of people miss out on, especially when they're trying to build something up, is that they just push the content, but actually don't push the engagement. So there's another trick for everyone. Yeah,
no, I agree with that completely. And in truth, we've been guilty of that. We're certainly trying to get better at it, but it's why it's a full-time job. It's really is a lot of work.
Yeah, and a lot of people miss that. It's if you're going to do content, you need to give it to somebody as a full-time job and not bolt it onto the young person that came into the business, because they'll know what it's all about. Yeah, another big mistake. Yeah, so and I think that's why we get it right, and that's why we like supporting people with making their content, because they get also on some of the platforms, they get to have it shared to theirs. We did a video when you came up on the live stream, which we co-collaborated with you, so it then appears also on your video shelf, which is a nice thing to do as well, to give people sort of the double rub then.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for all the followers that day. That was lovely.
That's all right. Okay. No worries.
Do you think social media is, if it hasn't already, do you think it's going to become the go-to source for news and information within construction?
Yeah, it is. So, and again, I always say it, and I would say it with try not to be disrespectful. There is other ways of consuming information in our sector, and it's generally paper-based. It's generally a quarterly or monthly magazine that comes out. Yet when you talk to electricians and you ask them, do they buy a magazine? The answer is no. And then do they read one? No. And that's a general term. So that's pretty loose. There will be some that love it. There will be some that obviously, don't. But if you want to get to those electricians, you've got to, as I said earlier, go through the platforms that they're on. And if they're not reading magazines, which some will be, but if they're not reading magazines, how do you get that information to them? And people like it fast-paced in certain degrees. And then there's educational stuff as well. We've done a brilliant series in association with Your Conduit, where we did a full Gary-style teaching, introduction, explanation, every step goes through. Did a full set of videos on those. And then I repeated them all again with Rick, but this time we did them TikTok style, less than 60 seconds. We had over 2.5 hours of footage that we crunched down to 60 seconds. And the amount of colleges I go to and somebody will say to me, you taught me how to bend conduit. And I get all big chest and, look at me. And I say, where did you watch it? TikTok.
Yeah.
I was like, just a little bit inside of me just dissolves away when I think, how have I managed to show you how to bend conduit? And they said, well, just pause it. I see the bit, pause it, flick it. And you think, if I hadn't have made that playlist, I wouldn't have serviced that younger audience on TikTok on bending conduit, because they were 8 or 10 minutes long. And when I was at Sparketing Live, I actually played the original video, which was about 11 minutes long. And I brought in all the individual ones on TikTok at the same time and numbered them. I'd actually did all the bends in all the pieces of conduit before I'd finished the first long video.
Wow.
So that just shows you how you've got to meet the audience on their platform. Now, we've got incredibly successful longer videos. And when we released them, we said, your conduit skills are a little rusty was the thing. And the amount of electricians that were in there saying it was great to refresh and bent a piece of tube for 10 years.
Yeah.
They wanted probably that more, I'm back in a classroom style thing, whereas the younger person just need the information. I'll watch it again if I can get it.
Interesting. Well, college is something we're going to come back to because I'm really interested in that, especially as we were talking earlier. But I want to get your take on it, Mick. What do you think about, where do you go for news in the industry? Do you go to certain websites, or do you go to social media, or do you read a magazine?
I think it depends on how quick you want the information and how deep you want it as well. Because it's interesting what you were talking about there, where TikTok, that tends to spark the interest. And then if you want to get into it a little bit deeper, then you'll start delving and you'll come across then the greater sort of websites and maybe the longer video that gives you more explanation and stuff like that. That stop and pause and do what I was wanting to do and then move on. That's interesting as well, because you can take something very quick and just literally pause it, replicate it yourself, and then continue on. But I find that I tend to sort of drop in and out of the fast moving stuff, which then takes you into, if you want to dive into it more and get more detail.
I always find that because it's driven from a phone, a lot of younger people's social media habits. I mentioned that I obviously use the telly now for YouTube because I quite like that, sitting down and watching some longer stuff. But your phone is held that way round, isn't it? So we've got it in the portrait position. And if you've got a video that's actually would be better in landscape, you're only got that, and then you're having to turn the phone. And you watch people when they're out, how many people hold their phone that way round in social aspects, or out in the public, watching stuff. It's very rare. Yeah. And as I live away from home all week, and the room I've got has got no TV in it, wouldn't play it anyhow because linear TV, who watches that? But again, I've had to, I'm balancing my phone or laying in the bed trying to do that, and it's annoying. Yeah. And I think, wow, I'm annoyed that I have to hold my phone because it's better that way round. And I can see over time people developing longer format content. I know they've just moved YouTube Shorts from 1 minute to 3 as a maximum length, which is fair enough. But having it in that position is just easier to watch. Can you get all your information effectively inside of a screen on a phone? So that'll be one to watch moving forward, I would think.
Yeah, I mean that's the challenge that we face obviously as well now. Social media, so historically everything's been has been in that portrait, that portrait plane, which is what this will be as well. But certainly when we're talking about really quick product videos or just really punchy pieces, we might grab a snippet of you from that camera and drop it into the portrait plane as a short, because you are right, people will just want to, they don't even want to turn the phone.
No. It's amazing, and again, it's always watch other people. That's it. So you're on the train. How many people are reading a book or a magazine? There'll be the odd book reader. You go back 20 odd years when I first started, people are there with a newspaper. No one buys a newspaper anymore. Allegedly, I know they still sell them, and people will do, but they don't. So how are they getting their information? They're on their phone, and they're going through that for their information. And if you're not, as a brand, in their playground, you're not playing with them, are you? You're
Agreed.
actually hoping that they find you by other means.
Yeah. What do you think are the big opportunities or the positives and the negatives for electricians that using social media?
Yeah, I always find I had a tradesperson come to me, so I needed a quote from a plumber. Very impossible to get hold of him. Okay, first of all, I felt I was doing him a favour eventually. But when he did turn up, I couldn't find any pictures of him. So I had the anticipation of opening that front door and looking at a person I only knew a name and had spoke to him on the phone.
Right.
He was a huge guy, just massive man mountain of a bloke. Come in, he was the nicest pie, but I would have liked to have seen him beforehand. There's a lot to be said. Now, lots of social media accounts that we follow as electricians show beautiful work, but never the electrician. And I just think if you're doing it to be customer facing, let's see you. And often a website will have generic images or work they've done, but no picture of the electrician.
Yeah.
And you just think it's really comforting to know who you're going to open your front door to.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be a top tip for using social media, to actually be in it.
Our mutual friend Theo Webster's even got his face on the back of his T-shirt, if you remember.
Yeah, he does. He does. Yeah,
he wants to get his name, his face out there so much.
Yeah, and he's the other side of it, isn't he? He likes to talk to his audience. He brings them in the van, and I like that. But social media is for everyone.
Yeah,
and if you've got a business, really, you should put some great pictures on it, but put yourself on there as well. So it's one thing you don't see.
We spoke with a contractor not all that long ago, and one of the things that he was talking about, because he's quite prolific on social media as well, was it's highlighting good and bad work. So do you think that, and going back to a conversation even earlier than that with somebody who's now retired from the industry, his main point was that we don't hold ourselves to a high enough standard in the industry. Do you think that social media could rectify that or encourage, more pride? Pride, that's a bit strong, but I
agree with that. I'm glad you talked into that position because I'm struggling now. The negative stuff, people love it. You can almost get a viral video by just leaving a little nugget in there for people to actually jump on. Okay, so I think Vargo Connectors once made a video that did over 1 million views because the guy's hands in it, his nails had dirt under his fingernails, and that's all people commented on.
Wow.
So it became a viral video, not about that, about everybody chipping in that his nails weren't as clean as they could be. So from that point of view, I like the fact that we see some fantastic jobs. And again, it's very encouraging, especially people learn in the industry, to look at people's amazing work. But in every amazing job, somebody will try and find something and are uber excited when they can put their comment in that is a little bit less positive.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll come on to training, but when I follow a lot of people training and you see their work, and it's probably a little bit average, but they don't know any better. And for some reason, somebody at college hasn't maybe guided them as well as they could have done, possibly, or they've had free reign to do whatever they want. And they put a picture bravely onto social media. And then you look at the comments, you think, there's no need for that.
Yeah.
So I've been encouraging people to say, this is the first time I've ever bent a piece of steel conduit.
Yes.
I'm sure I'll get better at it. This is my first attempt. What do you think? And just give yourself that big get out of jail card at the start of the message. So it's like, lay it in the right position it is, and not expect people to like you.
You see people when you frame it in that way, in my experience anyway, the comments are literally the other way. People can't get there fast enough to say, great, that's really good, and support them. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting.
Yeah, I've had a lot of experience across all social platforms with, if there's something negative in there, they're going to highlight it.
Yeah. So. It's a bit like us, isn't it, mate? Our relationship. I can't, every day I'm picking something negative about it.
Always, yeah. but that keeps me, on my toes. I quite
That's the intention. I'm just trying to make you better.
The one thing I wanted to ask was, obviously the internet, the web, all these social platforms, there's been a lot said about people putting up an image of themselves that may not necessarily be true. You've got this huge electrical company say that actually on the face, behind the scenes is a little one-man operation, and it's perceived to be much bigger given the fact that he's got a website that sort of does that. How do you sort of get around that and become more credible? Because people's suspicion behind a website, sometimes you look at that and think, that's a bit too hard to believe.
Yeah, one tip for people, websites is one of the most common words missed out on any electrician's website is electrician. So they'll say electrical installer, do domestic, commercial, industrial, and they forget the keyword, which is electrician. And if you search for anything, you'll probably search for electrician near me. Okay, so if you haven't got electrician in your website, it won't be found. So there's a top one for you. We used to do that as part of a road show. We'd check the vans in the car park, and then we'd do their website and then go on and do a presentation and actually tell the people that have missed it out. So we had some panicking electricians on there as well. Yeah, so like any social media, any website can give you a guise that it isn't. Okay, again, it's always back to the same thing, and you probably need a recommendation or a testimonial. I know they can be made up on websites and all the rest of it. But I would imagine lots of people interact with a tradesperson because it's been recommended.
Yeah.
So as that person done work for somebody else, if you're doing larger, if you were doing your building, obviously you're going to go out to tender and all the rest of it. But on those smaller ones, it's obviously, I think word of mouth and recommendation is still good.
Yeah, I mean that site Check a Trade, which is obviously still going on, and it's great. But for me now, I just go on Google. I use Google reviews because it's quicker.
Yeah,
it's just straight there. You haven't got to go through all the what do you want.
I think we've also done some stuff where we were talking about negative products, and we've highlighted negative things that we've seen in products that have actually, arrived here as well. And I think if you've got some sort of truth coming through, and you're being open and honest with people, even where there's negative things, that tends to sort of give a much wider picture, and people you become more credible in what you're trying to say. It's not all just we're amazing.
Well, people want that. People want to know that human beings, we are all fallible. We all do things wrong. So one of the big things that we tout here at Metpro, I mean, it's the first word in our tagline, in our mission statement, which is quality. Obviously, quality of service, but also quality of product is a big thing for us. The reality is that we do have issues with products, but we've got those quality procedures in place that we were showing you earlier that prevent them from hitting from hitting the customer or ultimately the end user. And I don't think we should have a problem saying that either, which is why I'm happy to do it now. Why I don't know why you would shy away from that. You're never going to be perfect, but as long as you're doing things to mitigate the issues, then
and it does give you a face of being more credible.
Absolutely,
people understand. Okay, well, they're not being open and honest about the products that they're seeing and how they control it. Yeah,
and you've done that by inviting electricians in to talk about their experiences with your products and things like that. You mentioned Theo Webster and all the rest of it. So I agree with that. Yeah, everyone's good. Yeah, everyone needs a coat of looking at themselves sometimes, don't they?
100%. Yeah.
I agree we're in that position ourselves as well because we're out there front and central making a lot of content. It's always chance. And what we like now is we'll go back and answer some of those questions in video format as well. So somebody will a very frequently asked question. The easiest way for us to do it as a business is actually answer it with a video rather than just keep typing it in. And if one person, several people ask that question, it's likely to be one of those questions most people are thinking about as well. So that's a good way of going back.
Do you get a lot of kickback on social media?
Yeah, like anything. There's people out there that regularly, like to give their opinion, which is fine. That's if I'm living rent free in someone's mind, I don't mind that. It's because it doesn't bother me at the weekends when I'm just getting on with the rest of my life. Yeah, it's part and parcel of the process, isn't it? You put yourself out there. You're never going to be perfect, as we said, but people are always going to have a different slant on what you're doing and all the rest of it. Yeah. So, which is just one of them, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, let's come back to colleges then. I know that's a big thing for you at the minute, especially with Efixx. So if we start with it, what are Efixx doing with colleges and how did it start?
Yeah, so when I came into the business, my one was that we'd have to keep one foot in colleges. So it was okay that I'd get a lot more time now effectively producing content that helps electricians, which is great. But my previous guys obviously was always with students. And I knew that it's incredibly difficult for colleges to get real quality interaction with brands and therefore support them. But also, as Ofsted have developed out what they expect from colleges, they expect employer engagement, outside interaction with the real world. How are you going above and beyond? How are you bringing in what is happening in your industry into the actual college? So that became a lovely bridge for us to come across to colleges with different things that we're doing. So we started out testing the water, so you would like to support it. It would be great if we could do this for absolutely nothing, but unfortunately we're a business. Our time is our money as well. So we got a lot of people, and some of them have been on from the very start. So they started on the first one I've done, and they're still on 3 years later, and they're continuing to roll it over, which is fantastic. So we get out to those colleges, and obviously they think it's about the visit. And I'd like to be really clear with people, it's not about one day. Because if you think we're connected only for one day, it's only the learners on that day, Monday maybe, in that year that get to see us and experience us. It's actually about being connected before the visit. How can you leverage the fact that you're involved with Efixx? The one day, fantastic, but how can we continue that leverage on it afterwards? So colleges have nominated themselves for awards that we do. They've nominated their learners post-college for 30 under 30 awards and all the rest of it. So all of a sudden, when Officer Inspector comes in, you've got colleges that say, well, Gary's visited us several times, not just the predominant visit. We've been doing his free training packages, which are CPDs, which help support our full-time and apprentice learners. We've also nominated them for awards, and we've got one of them's won, or several of them won 30 under 30 awards. We've also been shortlisted for college or lecturer of the year. All of a sudden, that looks like that's meaningful.
Yeah.
For me personally, but actually for the college as well.
Yeah.
That somebody can sit there, and I've done 4 Ofsted inspectors where I've been the call. So they ring me to ask how we're engaging with these colleges. And you just think to yourself, that's quite legacy. That is a good moment for Gary. Gary loves the colleges. And I've just started up a WhatsApp group chat last week with everyone who's in my phone. I always put them in, and I add the word college, even though a private training provider in there. So I search for everyone with a college in their name. And we've got 90 people now interacting with each other on a WhatsApp group. It was busy over the weekend, and I can put videos in there.
Yeah.
So I talk to them about stuff rather than typing. I just drop a video in, and all of a sudden you've got colleges all around the country trying to help each other.
Yeah.
Well, that's unheard of, because we wouldn't, not me personally, but I've been in colleges where if you've got a set of notes, you wouldn't share it with the person sitting next to you because they're yours.
Yeah.
Well, I send out a memory stick for all these colleges, which has got my 19 years worth of teaching material on, along with other people who've donated theirs. And the feedback is, I can't believe you sent me that memory stick. Well, why would I keep it and not help improve your college?
Yeah.
It's just, if we can bring everyone together, look at our electrical industry, wholesalers and all the rest of it, we all speak to each other. I'd like FE to talk to each other to make it easier and better for you. It's a very difficult job. It probably isn't as well paid as it should be. And learners, I'm sure they're always going to be challenging, but they've been brought up in a tech-savvy world. So if you've been in FE and you've not kept up with the times, sometimes you need a little help to move yourself forward.
Well, when we were speaking before, you were telling me about the length of time now that learners are doing this course. Can you give us a bit of a breakdown of that?
Yeah, so 25 years ago when I was teaching in the early days, about 4.5 days a week you had your learners with you. There would be some sort of maybe maths lesson in there, but pretty much 4 days with you, 4.5 days in total, which was great. So that was good. So you had a lot of time, okay? So you actually, which is nice, you got to teach them stuff, okay, and not deliver. Okay, and then over time, the hours kept bringing back and back and back. And when I left teaching, we were given 12 hours for the course that was 4.5 days. And when I left, they changed it to 8 hours. I know. So you can see, I call it the cascade effect. If you start off with a terrible start, okay, I'm not suggesting anyone is at colleges, but you get a bang average start. And then the electrician you're working with also went through the same system and was bang average as well. But they're not going to teach you everything they know because they'll feel threatened by you being part of the team. These are just general terms, I know nobody in particular. So the person under them doesn't get quite as good as the person above them, and then they train someone, and it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it? That we are potentially, and with world skills and stuff like that, we've got some great electricians out there, but you can see how they've dropped the hours down. They've dropped the funding down. We used to do an assessment. So you'd train to pass the assessment. Let's make a steel conduit one. We had a massive spider all above the ceiling with looping back boxes and running couplers. It's massive in black enamel conduit back in the day when that was everywhere. And that was the first job that we had in college for conduit. That was it. And then obviously you'd have an assessment piece, but you'd have all the skills in the world, backer bends, running couplers, everything. Now what happens is they look at the end assessment, work out what skill you need to complete the end assessment, and just train you to pass the end assessment. Right. So actually you haven't got any transferable skills. And I find that incredibly difficult to look at because you think to yourself, they're doing that because they haven't got the time. They're doing that because that means less material, and that means they can pass the assessment. Which is worrying.
That's my next question. It obviously is concerning, but how concerned are you then for the future electrician?
Yeah, a great point. Now, apprenticeship slightly different maybe than a full-time group. So apprentices, the issue I've got with apprentices is nobody realises who's the real trainer. Yeah. So the person training the apprentice spends 4 days a week with them. They go to college for 32 days in a year, and they are the ones training them. And what will end up happening is if someone's unsuccessful or struggling to complete their apprenticeship, they'll blame the college. Somebody has spent 32 days within a year and never take a coat of looking at themselves and say, well, hang on a minute, Did I really read the book when I left college, which people don't do? Did I ever go back to my notes? Do I ever follow anyone on social media that can make me train better? Have I done any additional learning away from college? So people's school brain says to them when they go to college, I don't hear the word homework. It's only 1 day a week. It's more fun. It's more fun than being at work because we go and have a game of pool or snooker and going out and a bite to eat and all the rest of it. And they don't think to themselves, hang on a minute, I'm being paid to learn here. Surely I could absorb as much as I can from the college. I will read the book. The amount of people that do it around colleges that buy the on-site guide and never read it. No one's read it yet. Why would you buy a book you're not going to read? Just don't buy it. I say you bought it because you were instructed by a certain date to own the book and you've left it in your college bag and they all go, yeah, that's what I've done. Yeah. So you just think about what you're doing. It's madness. But it's their school brain telling them, you didn't say homework. You didn't say read the book. I'll just go and carry on. And it's trying to get people to do that. And on social media, hopefully you'll spot them as coming through. I've done some work with colleges about their CV. And what you end up seeing for a full-time learner is a picture on there and a QR code. The QR code sends you to their Instagram page. Their Instagram page is where they keep all their photographs, certificates and all the rest of it. So in an interview, you can actually give them a digital portfolio of what you've done and what you're doing to try and get a job. So those people are the ones we want in our industry, the ones that are upwardly mobile and self-motivating in order to improve our industry. There's some fantastic people out there doing amazing jobs. It just would be better if we had a lot more time to actually train rather than train people just to pass exams, actually give them the skills that are obviously the ones that are needed in industry. But it's always going to be the case. You learn to drive, you pass your test, and then you actually learn how to drive when you get out there. And the same analogy with obviously going to college, but it's self-motivated learning is what they need. Okay, and that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
So what's the? I mean, I think you've already mentioned it, but what's the big factor in that diminishing length of time they're being educated?
Yeah, funding. So the full-time courses just keep taking the money off it, and also some colleges get more funding for certain things like horticulture. And that they'd get more money, and then the softer stuff would have slightly less money. So construction trades, I think, you get a 1.2 rather than 1, so you get a 0.2 uplift in the actual money you get for the course because of the materials and owners. But then what ends up happening is an underfunded course, as in hasn't got many learners on it. So the learners being effectively the pound notes. As you look at them, someone said to me once, we'll have to start calling them customers. I said, once we start calling them customers, I won't be working here. So they're here to learn. So with that in mind, you end up moving the money out of some of the more profitable ones into some that aren't. And I've seen colleges that have got 28 students in one room. Yeah. That is incredibly difficult. I struggled once I got to 20. So these people to do 28 because it's the same money for the lecturer, but there's more money for the course because you've got more pound notes sitting in the room.
I think that was the situation at Walsall College when we had those guys coming in. It was a high head count in that room as well. Yeah.
And I think I've been to Walsall College. So the big workshops, lovely environment and all the rest of it. The problem they had, again, there's lots of college staff, they're trying to hold and retain quality staff, which is a bit of a shame. They are giving now, I think, a £6,000 uplift for anyone in the first 5 years of teaching to keep them in college, which is a giant kick to anyone who's been in it longer, isn't it? That actually have been rowing the boat for many years. So that's quite divisive. And my WhatsApp group chat suggests it's very divisive because some people have just had their £6,000 drop. And then obviously other people have been teaching for 15 years who no one cares about.
Wow. Yeah. Are you worried about the future of generally of the next generation and the next generation and the next generation?
So the problem being if people that go into teaching, and you see a lot of this now. So somebody will do an evening course, be very keen. That's great. So you've got this really keen evening learner, and then you'll find they're teaching. So they've actually not been on site. Yeah, they're coming teaching because they read the books and they were quite keen. And many colleges, which I understand why they have to do it, many colleges have got one person in the team that's been sort of brought through the team system and dropped into teaching. And the problem is with that is obviously that those older skilled electricians that probably had a 4, 5, 6 year apprenticeships, they're all out of the workforce now. And we're now bringing through the people that have been in this system. And there is some amazing people out there, absolutely amazing. But how long can we keep retaining these amazing people? Unfortunately, you've got to pay.
Yeah. How we rectify the situation?
They say money doesn't work, does it? You got stress and pay somebody more money, it doesn't change the stress they've got.
Yeah.
But if you're taking a massive pay cut to go into teaching, the first thing I'll tell you is you need a Cert Ed, an Assessor's Award, and a Verifier's Award, or as you like to call it, 3 years of your life. That's just going to be dissolved into you actually going back to learning. The reason they like to do that is because you then become a student.
Right.
So for the college, you then become actually money, don't you?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden we put you on a course, we can claim some funding for you.
Wow.
So they do that. That's another one. So it becomes quite daunting, doesn't it? You know, you say to yourself, I'm either going to love this or it's going to be a tough situation. One of my ex-students has just gone into Milton Keynes College and I helped him out. I gave him my entire set of notes, which was, I think he said it was 69,000 files. I think something like that. It was just a ridiculous number of files. He got 19 years worth of material off me.
Brilliant.
To send him on his way.
You should write your own book.
Gary Adler's already done that, hasn't he? How to be, to be an electrician and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
I do a really good, I think personally, I do a really good talk with colleges. I do an hour where it's called Making the Most of Your Opportunity, where I go through all the mistakes you make based on school learning and how this is a massive opportunity. I usually say it's a £50,000 a year opportunity. It's only £200 a day. It's only £1,000 a week. There's about 50 weeks in a year. So if you've got a £50,000 a year opportunity, whether you be an apprentice or a full-time learner, but you're putting the effort in that suggests you don't want to take that opportunity. And that's quite crushing for some people. And I say to them, I'm looking for one person in the audience, just one person that goes, hang on a minute, Gary's got it right. I do drop my bag. I walk away from it. I find it next week, or I find it when my course starts again. I never read anything. I never watch, I never read the book I've been given. Never watch anything on YouTube. I just come to college. And you unpack that as a young person and say, does that sound like someone who's going to end up at the right destination?
Yeah, yeah.
I also ask apprentices, do it all the time. If you get to this point, maybe you could remember it next time I see you. I ask the third year apprentices, how many are, so there's 4 basic types of RCD. There's more than 4. And I say to them, what are the 4 common types of RCDs? They don't know. Absolutely no one's got it yet. So they will eventually say B, C's and D's, which are current curves, and they won't say A, C, A, F and B for the type of RCDs. And I say to them, have they fitted a circuit with an RCD on? And I said, yeah. I said, but you can't tell me what it is. No. And I said, one of them you can't install against. And we did a whole conversation piece about DC leakage and changing an AC waveform. And they're looking at you. And I said, but whose responsibility is this? And they'll always default back to somebody else's. It's yours.
Yeah.
So I use the analogy. When you were at school, you had a French lesson, GCSE with French lesson, and you had the rubbish French teacher. You knew you weren't going to pass French. I said, the minute you knew you weren't going to pass French because you had a rubbish teacher, it's your problem. Yeah. You can sort that out, not just go with the flow. And it's those people that to realise that actually to be paid for 4 years to train is a wonderful opportunity. You'll never get it again. But they don't take it seriously enough for some reason because of school. Yeah. Yeah, because of the bad way they've been taught at school. Yeah.
I mean, that seems to be a bit of a societal problem. But I mean, but then again, when I was at university, I was lazy as well. So maybe it's I don't know if it's just a youth thing, but I think the message you're putting out there and having those conversations is really positive. It's what's needed.
Yeah, well, we're going electric, aren't we? So heating's going electric. Obviously, we know that the electric car is going to be front and central for us. We're going to have obviously solar and battery storage at home. You have your own generation set, and businesses, are going to do that as well. And you just think to yourself, all of this is happening. Someone out there is going to cash in on it. And it will be the electricians of the future that are going to cash in on it. And you've got to just take it a little bit more seriously. In order to get through.
It's interesting, isn't it? Quite scary at points as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for me, this kind of industry, you've got to get hands on with it. You can't just be theoretical on this. You need to have the experience. You need to be looking at guys who have been doing this and how they're doing it and developing. And we talk about some of the things that we do and the products we have, which are time saving and everything else. And we had a conversation a few months ago about de-skilling. That was an interesting one. But I think there's so much still to learn out there. But you've got to have the experience. You've got to be put the tools in your hand and have a go at it. And
I like de-skilling because you make some wonderful products that make electricians' lives easier. Did we think that when the battery drill came out that was de-skilling the electric? And when we actually went from horse and cart maybe to a powered vehicle by petroleum, was that actually de-skilling our industry? Say, you don't want to wear the human body out because it's yours for the rest of your life. And you look back when I first started at some of the things that we did that were, it was proper graft, and now there's machines, that can take all of that off you. You're going to do it, aren't you? So if there's a better way, that makes it quicker, surely that's the way forward, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's a nice segue, actually, because we're coming, I think we're around about the hour mark now. So we'll start to wrap it up shortly. But I do want to talk to you about product quality, which is the key reason I got you here, Mick, as well, because of your knowledge on it. But do you, when you're out and about and you're filming things, or you're at colleges, or you're just looking around like I think we all do when we're in a supermarket or something and we're looking up, do you see product quality dropping within cable management?
I'd say the opposite really now.
Okay.
Since premature collapse in the wiring systems, start of the 18th edition, that now we're worried about actually the system in the ceiling high up, actually leaving there and causing problems. I think it was about 8 firefighters, they're all male, that lost their life or perished at work effectively. And you look at the pictures of them, they all look fit and healthy. Yeah. I'd imagine they were ripping like mad to try and get themselves out. So I think mostly now the containment and the supporting structure and fixings for it is right up there and as a really important thing. I think it's gone, it's way better than it was before. You think the amount of times you'd lift a suspended ceiling tile out and it'd just be draped in stuff, whereas that's not now. Whether it be fixed above there or on containment, it's just, you just can't get your building signed off. Yeah, you just can't start doing this. So I'd say the quality is there. Okay, and I'd say it's better than it's ever been.
That's good. I mean, that's a big thing for us, isn't it, Mick? If you would have,
I think you're starting to see that in the standards as well now. I mean, if you go back 20 odd years, and let's take conduit, we talked about it earlier, 4568, that was the British standard way back then. It was all about dimensions. And, you could control the wall thickness of your conduit, could control the threads, control the boxes and the sizing of all of those. You move forward 20 odd years to the British standard currently now 61386. There's very little in regards to dimensions on it, other than the important ones of your thread and how, because it's all about functionality now. It's about the compression, impact resistance, compression, and the strength, tensile strength of the products. So it's all about the fit, the function, the safety of, and everything else. And even the standards now are working to those effects, and we're seeing that right across on all the products really.
I think electrical wholesalers could help us. I use the brass bush as an analogy. Back 25 years ago, when I had these big boxes of brass bushes that were obviously used over and over again in colleges, and now you pick up a modern one. By the time you've tightened it, you've probably took all the edges off the brass. It's microscopically thin, and sometimes when it's trying to cover, it only just covers the box. Actually, the IP rating on it, you almost see into it because of the size and dimension. Now, where we've effectively value engineered that back to its absolute minimum compared to what it was before, where it was a big lump of brass. Okay, and you see a lot of that, and that's pushed by wholesalers thinking that they can get, you only asked for a 20 mil brass bush, so I can give you a 20 mil brass bush, and we're not looking beyond that at some quality ones. A good example of that is MC4 connectors. So only one company make MC4 connectors, and that's Staubli. They own the trademark for that. Yet all the ones that look like theirs are DC or solar DC connectors.
Right.
But they will be given out across every single trade counter as an MC4 connector, because that's what the person asks for when they walk in.
Right.
And then they hand over something that will say on the box, this is a solar DC connector, but people will call that an MC4. And there's probably pennies in it, but the wholesaler's got a choice, haven't they? They can take the market leader, the one that is been tested, and is on most of the panels, and then you ain't cross-pollinating it with one that isn't, and then you can have the one, the wholesaler. So the wholesaler, in some ways, is a little bit to blame when they're actually chasing their own margins, like every business would, but actually probably could do with a coat looking at themselves, couldn't they?
Interesting.
Yeah, I think we've seen, again, over the last 20 years, it's migrated quite considerably. We've seen a downturn in quality, people trying to get the brass bush down to the absolute minimum. And then for me, it started to sort of rise back up again now because of the 18th edition and various other different things, sites becoming a whole lot more, what's the word? They're looking for accreditation. They need to have the accreditation to support their own site administration and everything else. And so we now, as a business, being asked for a lot in regards to quality and what's behind products and the declarations around that, so that it goes all the way back to the end user and supporting the products that we're putting out there. And that's now forcing the products to be better, the quality to be maintained. We're seeing that a lot.
Yeah.
And we witnessed that today, didn't we? We see some of the tests you put through just a simple conduit. So there we go. People just think it's just a piece of conduit.
Yeah.
And then we saw some of the tests that you've gone through there. And it's quite refreshing to think that somebody would take that time to confirm the product they're sending out the door with their name on it is actually what you expect it to be.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting, that was.
Well, it might sound a bit cheesy, but the line we've used for many, many years now is we don't want either our customers or the end user to be part of our quality control process.
Right.
It just makes sense, really. Why would you want to put something out in the market, or why would you risk putting something out in the market that isn't fit for purpose?
Yeah.
As a manufacturer.
Yeah. I think it was a copper pipe once went out and it had impurities in the copper and actually was put all through a block of flats, and it became a sprinkler system.
Wow.
So it just all went out. But you wouldn't want the equivalent of that in containment, would you?
Absolutely.
You do not want to be the person that owns that story
No.
of having the problem with your products as they go out the door.
Exactly. Especially when you're talking about systems like, channel and bracketry and threaded rod that are load bearing. It's just not worth the risk.
No,
I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, the Building Safety Act is another aspect of this as well, where the end users now have to prove everything that's going onto a site, and they ask that right down the whole supply chain, and it comes back to us, and we've got to have all that information ready. We need to know about our products and be able to endorse them, to show the accreditations and everything else, and so that is forcing the market to make sure their products are meeting everything that it should do now. And that's a good thing. It really is.
It is, yeah. I do think that we are moving back. We're really rapidly moving faster and faster back towards brands, which I know was something. It was obviously before my time, but certainly when I spoke to Tony Howard formerly of Rexel, you'd go and ask for a certain set of screws, and it would be one particular manufacturer, one brand. I know that it's a bit more Wild West now in the UK, but I do see that shift with a bit more. Or a lot more, what's the word? Not trust. Loyalty. Loyalty, brand loyalty. People like a certain brand for a certain product or a system because it's not going to give them a headache, and if it's not going to give their customer a headache, there's no messing around at all.
But again, it comes from where it's been driven from. Because if people understand the Metpro brand as that meets that accreditation, it's been proven, and everything else, or Demon Cato went in as well.
Yeah.
Those ones, they're now putting these brands into the initial spec for the job. Right at the very start, architects are doing it as well, because they know it meets the criteria that it has to for that job, and it saves all the messing about, because that they know that's the product it will be used through. Now, if somebody changes that in that spec, they take then responsibility for that. They're not using Metpro product; they're using somebody else's for whatever reason. They then take responsibility for that because that was not spec'd right from the very start.
It's refreshing to hear, because often it was the overcurrent protection devices that would be specified, or the make of, say, a dado trunking or something like that, that buildings would do. But now to go down to that granular detail, actually saying we want the containment to be made by, that is refreshing to hear. That is, because certainly when I was on site, that was probably not the case. Yeah.
I think we have a responsibility as well as at manufacturer level. This is why we like having these kinds of conversations and exposing ourselves, but in the right way. Like I said earlier on, we've got no issue in acknowledging that we do have quality problems with product, but we hold them here. We rectify them here, and we want to educate people as well. I mean, that's, in fact, if you could look straight into that camera and tell people where you would use Pregal tube versus Class 4, because that's something that we know and we talk about probably not enough. Yeah. But the installers, I don't know how many of them know. But I mean, you said it earlier. Are we over-engineering internal installations by using a more expensive product?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Pregal for us, we keep both in stock here. Pregal is a product that we would recommend for internal use. If you then start working in areas where there's high humidity or external use, then we would recommend going for Class 4. But we've got both of those in now. I know a lot of people would keep Class 4 on the shelf because they don't necessarily want the bulk of keeping two different SKUs. Because Class 4 could do internal or external. But even with Waze, we've tried to sort of solve that by doing smaller bulk quantities of both. So you can like a master bundle, for instance, rather than buying it of 2 master bundles, one of each, we do a half master bundle now. So you can have pre and class 4 together on the same delivery, and it means that you're using the right product for the right job.
Yeah.
Comes down to knowledge again, though, doesn't it? So are the wholesalers helping you with your knowledge, or are they just providing a way of converting stuff over a counter? So if you were under the impression or knew the fact that you should be using, the hot dipped one, obviously is outside, but you're using it everywhere, and there was an alternative, and it's cheaper to use the other one. So you're actually spending more money on something you didn't need, when all of a sudden, black enamel conduit, I've seen some today, warmed my heart, I must admit. All the conduit that we used inside when I trained was black enamel, right up until probably the last 5-6 years was you just couldn't get it. So it was all galvanized from that point forward. But I don't think I was fully aware of the fact that we've got these two, where we've got obviously the hot dipped and pre-galvanized, and really we should be fitting pre-galvanized at college because we're only going to chuck it away. Yeah. I will see now at all these colleges that go the class 4 stuff, and you think it's still going in a bin. Yeah. So again, little price saving there for people.
And is that passed on at college level as well?
So some of the things you think, and again, this is down to people. I didn't teach anyone to pass an exam. Okay, that was just not a thing. You came to me and said you wanted to be an electrician, so I'll teach you to be an electrician, regardless of your level. So if you're a full-time learner at level 1, within 4 weeks, you'd be telling me about touch voltage, ADS, types of RCDs, all that. Never going to come up in your exams. This is why I've been an electrician. And I totally sympathise with people out there. With the amount of time they've got no waffle. They've just got to stick to the knitting and try and get people through stuff. That's where our free training packages, our CPDs, come in, and the videos that we do. We've done a whole video on class of conduits. It's not going to be the most exciting thing for a normal viewer to watch, is it?
How dare you?
But the information's out there in the wild. Someone's produced that content, and it's got a certain number of people that will interest. So you've got that. But it goes back to the person consuming the content. Are you the sort of person that asks the questions and want to know? We've done a free training package on the 4 common types of RCDs and where you use them, as well as DC leakage. The information's out there, and it's making sure that especially the younger generation are fully aware of the fact that they can take control of their own knowledge and then move it forward. And that's it's part of the problem, but there's certainly a solution out there, and you've supported it with you were doing a whole training videos on conduit, bending conduit. And again, are you going to shift product on the back of that? I don't know, but you've got a piece of content out there, lots of content out there that's actually improving our industry. And that's wonderful to see that people will go, I want to produce something that hopefully people can understand the quality in the Metpro product, but there's a training package that supports that as well, which is great.
Good, lovely. Gary, I think that's the perfect place to wrap up that section of the discussion. There's 2 questions we always ask our guests when they come in. So the first one is, what do you think is or are the greatest opportunities for electricians at present?
We said it's gone through. The whole world's going electric. So again, it's just a no-brainer. We've got a massive shortage. I think there's a 6,000 electricians short in our industry for things like solar and heat pumps. So that's if everyone's out there working, we haven't got enough people. So there's a massive opportunity within that. It's obviously the most exciting industry as well, rapidly changing, as we go to a more smart connected world as well. So that'll all link into it. So those people who are leaving being very savvy on phones and things like that, well, actually that tech's going to be inside of dwellings and commercial stuff. So you've got a chance of embracing all of that. So no reason not to do it, I would suggest.
Brilliant. And the last question is, how do you think that we, so manufacturers, wholesalers, installers, facilities management, education, how can we all work better together as an industry?
That's a really good question. It's almost pivots from the wholesale. I know people even 5 or 6 years ago thought with the event of things like Amazon just dropping stuff off, this is the way the wholesale world's going to go. I think there is an element of obviously less people going to wholesalers, but if you can get that part of the chain right, because lots of time there's buying groups, etc. in there, you get that part right, then the educators are people like yourself that actually put themselves forwards to produce content to help people. That becomes another tick, whether that be certificated or uncertificated, that we can bring it all together. And for me personally, if you get it right in the college, you get everything else right going forward, because good habits are hard to break. Okay, and if you can get those habits put in you at college, where it's a little bit different from school, that could improve our industry rapidly.
I couldn't agree more.
Sounds good.
Absolutely. Lovely. Well, Gary, before we wrap up entirely, is there anything that Efixx want to plug? Anything you want to shout about?
Well, if anyone gets to this part of the video and they're going to be hanging on for my plug, just enjoy the opportunities that are out there. Again, and like I said, we've got some great content, and other people have got great content out there. Don't consume everything that's out there. Don't just stick with one type of content. But yeah, just what can you learn and what didn't you know? There's loads. I'm learning all the time. It's embarrassing, when we get a video drop and I watch our own stuff, obviously, if I've not been in on it, and it's like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Today, the guy told me to put the seam in a certain. I'm going to have to do a recall of all the learners I've ever taught. You're going to have them all back in the room and say to them, there's a tip here about putting the seam in a different place. You'll have to wait for the video on that one.
Lovely. Absolutely brilliant. No, I think that's great. It's, that's one of the best things about life is constantly learning new things.
It is.
Couldn't agree more. And where can people go to speak to you or see Efixx's content?
Yeah, just go through the website. That's the best way, because you've got all the facets there. You've got the free training. You've got the college connection stuff. You can book yourself a college visit and things like that from the website. Website sends you to video content as well. We're on every single platform. So there's not one.
You really are.
Yeah,
you're everywhere.
But you have to service them in their environment. You can't ask somebody from Facebook to leave that to go to YouTube because they're on Facebook. So there's a top tip for people. Don't try and send them somewhere else. Keep them on their platform. And
lovely.
Algorithms don't want you to go somewhere else, do they?
Very true. Yeah.
So just remember that.
Very true. Gary, that's been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Mick, thanks for joining us again.
You're welcome.
And we'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Cheers, gents.